This is my epic entrance to Coffee with a Pastor. Bum 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 bum. Bum 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 bum. Okay, I'm gonna stop now. We're just gonna turn that red on down. And there we go. Guys, welcome to Coffee with a Pastor. Edition something. I'm not keeping track, but here we are. So, I'm going to pin this up right here. And we're going to get right into it. We're going to have a good time. So, Coffee with a Pastor, what we're going to do today, we're going to try and keep it not too long. We're going to do a review of the Sunday that we just had. I'm going to reflect on that. We're going to have a little bit of fun. And then I'm going to, challenge us with a couple of questions for this coming week. Sound good? All right. So this past Sunday, we talked about how when life gives us more than we can handle, that we have to consider what the benefit of that is. And that there's an illusion that we have these statements that God will never give me more than I can handle. And then when we have those ideas, it leads to frustrations, disappointment, and it's just not true. What is true is that God will always provide a way out of our temptation that we find. That in testing, there's always an out. That God, by His Spirit, when we partner with Him, it is in fact possible. It's the process of sanctification that we are able to say no to temptation and that it doesn't lead to sin, and which is such good news. It's so important for us to know that when we're feeling overwhelmed and crushed by temptation, we still can always say no. And of course, there's supports and there's resources for being able to do that and have it work really well for us. So that's something that we reflected on this past Sunday. The other part of all of that this past Sunday is that we took a look at kind of why being in over your head more than you can handle actually could be an opportunity for good news. The first is that it can cause us to depend on the presence of God in our lives. I don't know if that's been the case for you in your life, but it has certainly been the case for me that when it's too much and I can't handle it, those are the moments when I'm actually aware and turn to God and just say, Lord, I need your help. Please be with me through this. God doesn't promise to alleviate all suffering right here, right now. There is that future promise, that glory that we can all await, that every tear will be wiped away. But that's something that we can see glimpses of here as the kingdom comes, but we still wait for that. And it's also a chance when we're in points of challenge in over our head, we can't handle something. That's when we experience God's power. His power to either deliver us right from that event in that moment or in that experience, divine healing. Those things are real and true because of the resurrection. We know that is the case. Also, we experience His power to get through it, which is probably the most important in all of this, is that ability to sustain faithfulness to God and to not give up on life when things get really hard. Now I have a question. What's the most terrible spiritual advice that you have ever gotten? What do you think that is? I was thinking about this I was preparing for last Sunday, as well as for this. Probably the worst spiritual advice I've ever heard is when someone turns to a grieving family member and says something like, God just wanted His angel back, or something like that. Just when people try to diminish the grief and pain that come through something like death. I think that is the worst spiritual advice, is just that attempt to not just say, this is terrible, and just to admit that and acknowledge it, but to be like, oh, God just wanted him back, wanted her back. And you're like, what? No, that's so brutal. So that's just one of the things that stood out to me I was thinking about. And here's another question for us to consider as we move forward in this. What habits, all right, so what habits can you create in order to make God's presence the first place you go when you're overwhelmed? Think about that for a second. What habits can you create in your life that allow God's presence to be the first place you go when overwhelmed? Because where is it that you go when you're overwhelmed? Do you go for the fridge? Do you go for a phone call with a friend? Do you go for a walk? Do you indulge? Do you just, what do you do? The question, the challenge is how can you be intentional with the rhythm of your life to actually make God's presence the first place you go when you're overwhelmed? What could that look like for you? And I think it would look different for everyone. It's not like there's a one fits all kind of approach. However, I do think that we can all reflect more deeply on how do we create rhythms that can actually do that for us. So those are some things I wanted us to be reflecting on from this past week. I don't know if you noticed this. Some of you have probably been staring at this the whole time and haven't been listening to a word I've said. I took the word, so I have limited pieces. So I have to figure out what to do. So this is what I created last time. So the last one was really terrible, and I did it in your presence, and it was brutal. My mom texted me later in the day and was like, "Really, Trent? White without an H? Come on." So, anyways, I chose to write this one out. To thee we wish and wash. I thought that was, kind of COVID appropriate. We wish and wash. Not wishy-washy. That's different. But we're not talking about that. Wish and wash. To thee we wish and wash. I have no idea what it means. Anyways, we've got that. we can ignore that now. We can move on. How about we go over to the news, to the weather? Just give us a second. Hello. Yeah, it's nice out. Yep. So it's nice out. That's what my inner voice is telling me, which makes me wish to be outside. No, I actually want to be here with you. I want to be outside later. So for now, I want to finish this off with a quick reflection on a fantastic story from the Old Testament about when Moses was actually in over his head. He wasn't really quite admitting it, but his father-in-law noticed this, made some advice, and it was really valuable. So it's in Exodus 18, when Jethro, his father-in-law, comes and visits Moses. And Jethro observes Moses from dawn until the end of the day, sitting there, taking and listening to the woes and the worries and the thoughts of all of the Israelites. And it's just like day in and day out. And at the end of it, this is what Jethro says. He asks, "What is this you are doing for the people? Why do you alone sit as judge while all these people stand around for you from morning till evening?" Imagine that. It's a bit of a bottleneck happening here. And then Moses answered him, "Because the people come to me to seek God's will. Whenever they have a dispute, it is brought to me, and I decide between the parties and inform them of God's decrees and instructions." So it sounds good. That's like, oh, how spiritual of you, Moses. However, then Moses' father-in-law has this reply. "What you are doing is not good. You and these people who come to you will only wear yourselves out. The work is too heavy for you. You cannot handle it alone. Listen now to me, and I will give you some advice, and may God be with you. You must be the people's representative before God and bring their disputes to him. Teach them his decrees and instructions, and show them the way that they are to live and how they are to behave. But select capable men from all the people, men who fear God, trustworthy men who hate dishonest gain, and appoint them as officials over the thousands, hundreds, 50s, and 10s. Have them serve as judges for the people at all times, but have them bring every difficult case to you. The simple cases they can decide themselves. That will make your load lighter because they will share it with you. If you do this, and God so commands, you will be able to stand the strain, and all these people will go home satisfied. Wow. Thank you, father-in-law. Excellent advice. Moses takes a lot of probably humility to accept the advice of a father-in-law. Good for you, because that's exactly what Moses does. He takes it, and it lightens his burden. So what do we take from that? This is just a classic story of someone who is experiencing more than they can handle, and they just keep trying harder, and pushing harder, and pushing harder. And one of the tips, one of the points of advice for all of us, share the load. Share the load. If you're in over your head, if you're experiencing more than you can handle, include other people in it, in whatever that it looks like. Ask people to pray for you. Ask people to help you out. Don't be afraid, particularly now when we're in isolation from one another. Don't be afraid to reach out and say, help. Please help. That is an important and valuable thing for us to do. And as a community of faith, we want you to be able to do this. We want you to be able to reach out and share the load with others. This is a biblical principle for us to do, and it's right alongside us learning to ask God for help, asking God to be present with us in our challenge. Right after that, we turn and we ask for support. So if you're doing something alone and it's too heavy for you, go to God. Let His presence be the first place you go when you're overwhelmed. And then invite other people into it. Don't do this on your own, friends. This is not a season for you to be the solo warrior. There's nothing in that. Even though you're a person that might be able to handle so much, you have like huge capacity as an individual, invite other people in. And that's what I'm going to end with today. So, friends, take care. And when you watch this, I just pray that God's blessing would be all over you, that you would encounter His presence, that you would know that He cares, and that you would be encouraged to reach out to someone and ask for help, whatever that might be. So thanks so much for your time, and God bless. Talk to you again.